Hello and welcome to the Geek Legion of Doom. This is an action movie review, and today I'm going to be looking at Sahara. Not the Matthew McConaughey film, I'm afraid, ladies, nor is it the original Humphrey Bogart film. Instead, it's a remake of the Humphrey Bogart film starring James Belushi, made in 1995. So this is a World War II film set in, obviously, Africa, being the Sahara, and it follows James Belushi's character called Joe, and he is the sort of, I believe he's a sergeant in charge of a small American tank crew. I think there's three of them in this tank called Lulabill, they call it. And essentially what they're doing is they've sort of been fighting. They're all kind of battle weary, and they're sort of withdrawing to try and sort of regroup with Allied forces in another area. They're running low on supplies, especially water, which is the sort of the main theme of this film. On the way, they kind of end up picking up a group of other Allied soldiers, including some British. There's an Australian, a French guy, and an African sort of a colonial soldier, and he's got an Italian prisoner as well. And then this African guy basically says, well, there may be some water at this well, so they kind of make a detour to go to this well, but unfortunately it's dry. At this point they're dangerously low in water. They said, well, there's a chance there may be some water at this other location. It's kind of out of the way, but they have to go. There's no other choice, unfortunately. On the way to this second location, they're attacked by a German fighter plane. They managed to bring it down and actually capture the pilots. Now they have a German and a Italian prisoner. So you've got a whole mix of nationalities portrayed in this film throughout the war. And so they kind of find this hamlet. There's some buildings and stuff there, and there's a well which does have a small amount of water in it. So they basically it's basically sort of dripping down from these kind of this rock basically, and they're sort of collecting it. So they sort of hold up there for a little while. And they find out that there's actually this entire German battalion is kind of advancing on their position, because like them, they're also running out of water and kind of a desperate to sort of have some. So their initial thoughts are to get out of there basically, but James Belushi's character sort of has the idea that they could actually delay the Germans from reaching the Allied forces by kind of almost defending this well, because the Germans don't know exactly the force size and stuff, and they also don't know that the well is actually pretty much empty, and we're talking they've probably got a few litres of water. There's nothing, they've maybe got 10 litres of water from this well, and that's practically it. So initially, obviously, the guys are like, well, we're going to get slaughtered because there's like hundreds of these Germans and there's kind of like 10 of them or something. But eventually they kind of, in true sort of like, patriot spirit, they sort of think, right, okay, we're going to sort of like, defend this well to try and help our guys and everything like that. So it's kind of one of these sort of like almost a little bit sort of flag wavy films, so to speak, if you know what I mean. But it's still an enjoyable action film. So the Germans turn up basically, and they don't know exactly how many sort of like of these Allied soldiers are there, and they're trying to assault it. So you've got some good action scenes in this. One of the things I personally like about this film is the relationship between all of the Allied soldiers, and they're all, to be fair, they're kind of maybe a little bit stereotyped. The Americans are sort of portrayed to be almost like cowboy type, and you've got a British guy who's the sort of like, sort of has the stiff upper lip and what have you, and you've kind of got this Frenchman that they all call Frenchy and stuff like that. So, but still the actual kind of like the camaraderie that they all have, it feels quite genuine. They actually just feel like a bunch of guys, and you're sitting around talking about home and stuff like that. And I really enjoyed those scenes, and it has kind of some fun moments in it, and it's a bit levity. What I also quite like, I mean, this film was made in '95, and they kind of give almost so they've captured this German prisoner, and they almost give him a very small, sympathetic edge, and he's basically this German guy sort of listening to this French guy tell a story about how the Nazis basically kind of like slaughtered all his friends and not what, and he actually sort of says like that wasn't me, that might have been the Nazis, that wasn't me, because this French guy basically wants to slit this German's throat. And when you look at the other side, obviously it's the German's duty. His duty is to escape. As if you were, an Allied soldier and being held prisoner by the Germans, it'd be your duty to escape. But like I said, it's only a small sympathetic edge, really. It's obviously he's obviously portrayed as to be the enemy or what have you. And then you've got this big sort of assault, waves of assault from these Germans. Trying to sort of take over this sort of little hamlet. There's a few scenes where you've got sort of James Belushi's character sort of trying to sort of almost basically delay tactics the German sort of commanding officer, and there's some sort of great scenes there where basically James Belushi's character is just bullshitting him to sort of buy time, and he's sort of saying, well, you basically give us all your guns and we'll give you some water, even though there's not actually really any water to give. One of my favourite scenes of this film is in one of these sections where they're kind of having this sort of conversation between James Belushi's character and the commanding officer of the Germans. In the background, you've got this sort of the British officer kind of sort of almost look like he's washing sort of with this water, and they pretending they've got all this water there, and actually, in fact, they're kind of they're sort of pouring it into, and one of them's holding a bucket underneath to sort of try and capture it all, because obviously there's not all that water to begin with. And it's such a funny scene. I really like, I think it's such a brilliant scene. I just love rewatching that scene. It's just a German's face where he's sort of watching these guys basically thinking they're absolutely wasting this water, whilst his guys are all, all dying of thirst and what have you. So it's a little bit cheesy. It's kind of obviously a little bit realistic. It's a sort of World War II films, especially TV films in sort of made in this kind of the 90s and stuff. They're never going to be portrayed as sort of a realistic depiction of war. And obviously, so this is actually a remake of a pre-existing film anyway. So in regards to sort of realism, yes, it's not going to be a realistic depiction of that type of situation. Yes, they probably would have got overrun pretty much straight away, but it's a fun film to watch. I'd say it's a good action film. It's got good characterization. I would say, to be fair, I think probably the supporting characters are more interesting than James Belushi's character. I would say he's not portrayed as particularly, he's not a bad character, but I think the surrounding characters are probably more interesting. I personally feel, but I enjoy this film. It's a good action film. World War II films, you can kind of they don't really date as such, because obviously it's a period piece, so it still looks pretty good even if you watch it by today. So I'm going to give this film an 8 out of 10. I thoroughly enjoyed it. I can recommend it as a good action film, and if you're a war film fan, I think this is pretty decent. I was reading some facts about it, and apparently they've tried to kind of make it as sort of like authentic as possible. Apparently all the German soldiers were played by Australian actual military, and they all have moustaches, or a lot of them have moustaches and stuff, and they had to shave their moustaches off because obviously the Germans weren't allowed moustaches in World War II and things like that. So there's kind of a lot of little neat touches and stuff up there, and I enjoyed it. So go watch it if you're a World War II fan or movie fan. Let me know what you think if you've seen it, and I look forward to seeing you next time. See you later.